Alright everybody, welcome to another episode of You Don't Know Squatch. How you doing today, Jim?
I am doing awesome. Trying not to blow away with this incredible wind we got going on outside.
Yeah, so just to our listen ahead of the episode, if you hear any blowing wind, that's why. It's super gusty, and there's nothing we can do about that.
Nothing we can do. We don't have power to stop the wind, unfortunately.
I wish. That would be super cool.
I agree.
All right, so what do we got today? You got another phone call.
We've got another phone call to do. This is with Scott and Beth, and they are a couple who came into the store about a year ago. It's taken me that long to work through my list of potential interviewees, but I'm excited to get them on the phone. And it's an interesting story, and it happened here in Colorado, actually above Boulder. So we won't hold that against Sasquatch that he's thinking it's Boulder, as we like to joke here in Colorado. You know what they say about Boulder? It's 35 square miles surrounded by reality.
Back when I used to smoke cigarettes.
Sasquatch fits into that just right because most people don't think he's real anyway.
That sounds nuts. Back when I used to smoke cigarettes, I actually got a ticket in that town for smoking a cigarette on the street.
Really? On the street?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was the last time I went to Boulder.
Yeah, interesting. So, Boulder aside, we'll get Scott and Beth on and hear what their story is about their Sasquatch encounter, which happened many years ago. Right?
And then, after that, you're going to furthermore prove that I don't know Squatch, and you're going to tell us a little bit about something they call woo.
Yeah, woo-woo. We're going to find out what is woo in the Sasquatch world.
Yeah, I only know about, the Wu-Tang Clan. That's it. That's the only woo I know.
Well, we're going to enlighten you today, Josh.
All right. Well, let's get to that phone call.
Awesome. Here we go.
Your call will be answered in the order it was received.
Okay, as I mentioned in our introduction, I've Scott and Beth with me. And welcome, guys. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Yep. Hello.
Our You Don't Know Squatch family looks forward to these interviews, and
Good.
I really appreciate you both being willing to be on the show today. So,
Nice to meet
now you came into the store. Let's see. I was trying to remember how long ago that was.
It's
Do you
been
remember?
Year.
I think it's been about a year.
Last
About
winter.
a year. Okay.
Yeah.
I keep people's names for a long time, as you can tell, to get back with you and hopefully get your interview. So I am going to just let you go for it and tell us your story. Time is not a big issue, so tell it in as much detail as you like. I may have a few questions as you go, but
Okay.
I think our listeners really just want to hear from you. So
Okay.
take it away.
Well, I guess I'll start with most of the story is with my husband. He's the one who saw it. I heard it. We were dating. It's been about 37, 38 years, and, 1983.
Summer of 1983.
And we went up to have a picnic up in the mountains, and we wanted to be, a little bit more isolated. We went up above Boulder and got all situated, but then I had to go pee. And so I asked my husband to go get my sweater from the car so I could go ahead and go to the restroom real quickly. And he did that. He went down the hill and very kindly went and got my sweater. And then on his way up, I heard him yell really loudly, "Hey!" I thought he was yelling at me. So, and then I'll let Scott go from there.
Yeah, so I went down to the car and got her sweater, and the car was probably, 40 or 50 yards away from the side of the hill that we picked. And as I came up the hill, I saw movement above Beth, probably 30, 40 feet. And I saw this figure. It was totally dark in color, and it was like peeking back and forth a couple times from a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And then it stepped out, and I saw basically like from the waist up, and it was just so huge. And it had the shape of like a well-trained athlete, that V from a tiny waist to these huge, broad shoulders. And yeah, and like what they say on all the shows and stuff, there, you don't notice a neck because it's just so muscular.
Yeah.
And I didn't think about it. I just yelled, "Hey!" And it ducked back behind the tree one more time, looked out, and then just immediately about-faced and took off in the opposite direction.
So fast.
So fast, and it sounded so violent with the branches breaking, and just whatever was in its way was getting tossed aside. And Beth asked me, "Was that a moose?"
Because I thought, it sounded like that.
Yeah, because she didn't see it. She heard it.
So by the time I turned around to see what he was talking about, it had taken off.
And we heard it for several seconds going away from us. And I told her, I said, "That was no moose."
And then when we got in the...
we've lived here our whole lives. We've seen bear and deer and moose.
Yeah.
And this thing, like I said, I saw it from the waist up. But it was so gigantic. It was... If that was...
I think we were both in shock.
Yeah, I was in shock.
Yeah.
I don't know how to process it.
We just ran to the...
And we weren't, afraid. We got afraid later.
Yeah, that's true. We did.
It was I don't know what that was, but we should probably leave. And then we made our way back down to the car, and we left.
Yeah, and that was it.
And that was pretty much our story.
So how much did you talk about it as you drove away?
Well, it took us a while, but we drove back down to Boulder. We were up above Boulder Canyon, and we drove, I think we went to Taco Bell for lunch, and we were talking about it, and we were just like in shock. I could not believe, and we had heard about Bigfoot or whatever, but we didn't really pay any attention to stuff like that. And then it was pretty clear to me that was a Bigfoot. I have no doubt in my mind. I know That's
what you thought as you saw it?
Yeah, and it's so loud.
Well, I knew immediately it wasn't an elk. You know how an elk will lay its head back and the antlers go on its back when he's crushing through the trees and stuff? It was no elk. It wasn't a bear. This was on 2 feet, and it moved like a superhuman athlete.
You could feel the 2 feet, the stride of somebody on 2 feet. And I didn't even absorb that until we got to the truck, and I realized that. His
retreat, or whatever you want to call it, was just so loud and violent that
it was scary.
It was very shocking. We couldn't process it for a few minutes at all.
So,
were you, as you saw it, Scott, were you concerned that Beth was in danger from it?
That wasn't my first thought. My first thought was, what is that guy doing?
Yeah.
And then when he got a little further out from the tree, I just saw his massive size. I mean, it dwarfed the tree trunk. It was huge. And that's when it was involuntary when I yelled, "Hey," at him. I mean, I didn't even think to do that. It just came out. And at that point, I was a little concerned that maybe this thing would come down the side of the embankment there. But when he turned and ran, obviously he wasn't coming after us at that point. But initially I wasn't afraid. I was just in shock.
Yeah.
And then it kind of turned to fear, just because of how big he was. And I was wondering, what is he doing? Why is he looking at Beth? Why was he being up there all sneaky? But... as we thought about it, it was like he was observing. I don't think he meant to threaten anything. I think he was just observing.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to go down to the car and come back up?
It was pretty fast.
Oh, I don't know. It was probably 3 or 4 minutes probably, because the car was down the hill.
It was down about 3 or 4 minutes.
Between 30 and 50 yards away. So it took me a while because, you're in the mountains. We're going uphill.
Yeah.
And I didn't sense any danger, so I wasn't like any real hurry to get down there and get back up. I just kind of walked down there and walked back up. So
do you wonder now whether it was already there before you left to go to the car? It was watching you?
I think so.
Yeah, well, we've wondered that. We have no way of telling because I didn't see it till I came back up. But, I think that's a possibility for sure.
Yeah. We went home and told my mom, And she told me not to tell anybody that story.
And my father-in-law kind of chuckled at us. We weren't married at the time, but he kind of thought, oh, you're just two crazy kids trying to get a rise out of him.
He didn't really.
Right.
And I didn't know.
Have you told anyone who's believed you?
Oh, yeah, our friends.
Yeah, we have a couple of good friends. They believe us. They believe in ghosts and stuff like that. So their thinking is why couldn't this exist too?
Right.
Right.
And my theory has always been, everybody that says they've seen something, can they all be lying?
I know.
It only takes one person to be telling the truth for it to be true.
Right.
And our dear friends that believe us, he's a fireman and she's a nurse. So they're very practical oriented people, but they believed the story. They knew we wouldn't make it up.
Yeah. But I've had some people that I've told at work over the years look at me like I'm kind of nuts. But like when you see
you probably think about it before you decide if you're going to tell someone.
Yes. Yeah, we don't tell too many people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I think there's more people that are open to it, but they're more afraid to come out and say, "Oh yeah, I believe that too."
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. It's been many years now. Have you ever told someone whose reply was, "Oh, I saw one too"?
Oh no. Did you?
No, I've told people before, and they'll say, "Oh, well, I saw a UFO."
Yeah, they'll say that.
Yeah.
But other than like the day we were at your down at the Bigfoot store and museum, we've had a couple of people that told us their story briefly that day we were there.
It was really nice. Yeah, people.
I think there's more people that believe it than say they don't. I think they're just afraid.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably 2, 3, 4 times as many people who have seen them and have never spoken about it or have never called any of the numbers you can call to report a Bigfoot sighting.
Sure.
They saw it and they kind of keep it to themselves. But
absolutely. Yeah, I think you're
But
right.
it's interesting to me. What I find interesting in this story is it never made any vocalization, did it?
No.
It was
Okay.
just me yelling at it, and then
Yeah.
Woody.
So it obviously made a decision to step out where you could see it. It could have stayed in the underbrush. You would have never known it was there.
no, we would have never known. We didn't hear any.
You were walking up, looking that direction, and it stepped out.
Yep.
I assume because it wanted you to see it.
Oh.
Yeah, I've never thought of that.
Yeah,
I
never.
just, my eyes caught movement, and that was that. So that was very stealthy for as big as I think he was. I mean, I would hate to estimate on a height, but I could give you a width. He was bigger than anybody I've ever seen. And I've been to lots of basketball games. I've seen Shaquille O'Neal in person, and he was way bigger than that guy.
Bigger than that.
Oh, yeah, it was gigantic. It was just like...
Well, we know that they know how to hide. That's not a problem.
Right.
And I'm convinced that when they make an appearance like this, or when they make a sound, we have numerous stories where my research partner saw one at the gifting site that we have used over the few years.
Oh.
And he was walking up a trail, and it was behind him, stepped out into the trail, and barked at him.
Oh, my.
So that he would turn around and look. And if it had remained silent, he would have kept going up the trail and would have never known it was there.
Right, yeah.
So they do choose to be seen. Now, it's interesting that when you yelled, it took off like a bat out of hell. And, I wonder... Have you ever thought of going back to that place to see that spot again?
Oh, no. We've never gone back.
Well, I don't know that I could ever find it again. I mean, it's so changed up there now, but because it's up Boulder Canyon above the falls somewhere on a forest road. But there's been so much construction up there, new house and stuff. And it's been 37 years. I don't know if I could find the exact spot again.
We don't go out to the mountains anymore. Unless there's a hotel.
Yeah.
We don't go hike.
Right.
we,
anymore.
years ago, we would go to the mountains, like up to Estes Park, and we'd always be on the lookout for, the trees that are broke or footprints.
Right.
Always looking for that stuff. I see lots of coyotes and hawks and stuff, but I always want to see it again, sort of.
Yeah.
Sure. No, I hear you.
Yeah.
It's almost like you'll never look at, after something like that happens, you'll never look at the woods again the same way.
No, you don't.
Right, and I don't think I would go up there without some kind of a sidearm or something.
Right.
You never want to purposely hurt them.
Yeah, but I don't. The thing was
makes you
so
more
big, and the
confident.
way that the thing that scared me the most was just the violent nature of his retreat. I mean, it takes you a while just to climb up a hill, but this thing went through the trenches and stuff like it wasn't even there.
Yeah, it's something else.
Yeah, had you been able to, had you ever gone back, it would have been interesting to go back up to where it was standing and follow where it ran, see if there were any tracks. I mean, obviously, you would have found a lot of broken underbrush because it was making so much noise as it took off.
Well, looking back on it, I wish we would have done that, but we
were afraid.
We were afraid.
At the time, you do what you're going to do. And was it in shadow, or was there any sun shining on it?
Pretty sunny.
Well, it was in a pocket of trees. We were kind of in the shade from the trees. It was underneath, it was, like I said, it was 30 or 40 feet above where we had our picnic set out. It was probably 2:00 in the afternoon.
Okay.
Midsummer, and it was probably, the hillside was facing where he was looking east, and I was traveling west from where the car was parked.
Okay.
So
do you remember any details? You said he was dark. Do you remember anything about his face? Could you even see his face?
No, it was just this dark outline, and then when he stepped out of that tree, just the thing that struck me was, like they always say, the absence of a neck. But, he has a neck, it's just so muscular. And then, an athlete's build, they call it that V shape. He had this waist, and then it went up to these shoulders that were so broad and thick. When he turned and to run, you could tell he was twice as thick as a man. He was just gigantic.
Yeah.
And did you say, Beth, that you could hear or feel his footsteps as he ran away?
Right, and I turned around where Scott was looking, and it was, throwing trees. I didn't see it, but you could see all the movement of the trees and the grass and everything. And so as we made our way back down, that's when I realized it was on 2 feet, and I told Scott that was on 2 feet, because I really thought it was a moose at first.
Yeah.
And we've seen moose up at Estes Park and stuff, and they're big too. But I have no doubt that this wouldn't have any trouble taking a moose to the ground. He was so physically imposing.
Right.
And moose.
Go ahead. Moose are big animals, yes.
Yes, they are. But this was taller than a moose. It was just. If I had to guess, and I don't want to guess, but if I had to, I would say it was at least 8 feet tall. It was just huge.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, most of the encounters that we hear about are like yours, where it's very brief.
Yeah.
The Sasquatch tends to make an exit first.
Right.
If that were not the case, if they chose to come after us, as you could tell, there's nothing you could do.
Oh, it'd have zero chance.
That'd be it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking back on it now, I wish I wouldn't have yelled. Knowing what I know now and how we're interested in it, it would have been nice just to stare at him and see.
Check him out a little longer,
But at that point, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Sure. Well, or raise your hand. I mean, I've had a long distance sighting, but I've often thought if I have a close up encounter, I may poop my pants. I don't know. I mean, nobody knows till it really happens.
Right.
And Yeah, everybody.
my desire would be to try to communicate with it, to,
Oh, yeah.
hold my hands out to show that they're empty and
Right.
say some things to see if it tries to speak back to me.
Wouldn't that be?
See if he'd wave back to you or something.
Or wave back or
Yeah.
something, but it's clear that this Sasquatch did not mean any harm to either of you, or it could have easily
Right.
done so.
Yeah, that's why I was saying, looking back on it, I think he was just observing, wondering, what are these people
Well, I
doing
think we
here?
came across his path.
Or, yeah, maybe we interrupted it doing something, or
Sure.
Yeah. So.
who knows?
Were you at a campsite when this happened?
No, it was just driving around.
Yeah, it was just,
A date.
I guess, yeah, we were on a date. It's like a forest road.
Yeah.
I guess it was a
It was
dirt
a
road,
forest road.
but there was this clearing, and we said, let's go up there and sit underneath those trees right there
It's a nice spot.
against that embankment, and let's eat our lunch.
Yeah.
And then we were going to go for a hike, but that got canceled.
Everything just got left.
Yeah, I imagine so.
But
No
looking
thought of
back
going
on
on
it,
a
I
hike
wish
after
we
that.
would have went back up there
Yeah.
just to see
Sure.
if we could see footprints or
But yeah.
something. But at that point, after a few minutes,
Maybe a group
you're
of
like,
them.
let's get out of here. This
Yeah.
is nuts. That thing was huge.
You didn't give it much thought.
Well, it's easy to second guess yourself now, but at the time you did what you felt like you needed to do, which was to leave.
right.
And there could have been more Sasquatch around there, who knows, that were also watching you.
Oh, yeah. Never thought of that.
Yeah.
You always think of them as
Just so solid.
cruising around by themselves or whatever.
Well, our theory is when you see one, there's more there. You're
Really?
seeing the scout that's there to distract your attention. It's usually a male, as much as people can tell sex from a distance, but
Right.
the females do have breasts, so and their body is shaped somewhat differently than the male. Rather than the chiseled look, they'll have more padding because they've had
Babe.
offspring, and
Right.
so they're still extremely large and powerful. They're just
Oh, yes.
don't have the same style of physique as the males do. But yeah, as you said, so large, so wide. That's what my research partner John said when he turned around and saw this thing in this trail. His
Oh.
first thought was, "That's strange. I don't remember seeing a big
Yeah, big guy.
tree stump in the middle of the trail." And while he was having that thought, it turned and went into the woods and
Oh,
disappeared.
gosh.
And so
Oh, my goodness.
he sat there for 30 minutes. He initially thought it was a hiker. That's what his brain told him.
Right.
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 And he waited for it to come back out, but it never did. And
Oh, that's,
he says, looking back, he knows his brain was just trying to make sense out of something that made no sense.
right. Yeah.
So he didn't go into a full-fledged panic.
How many,
Right.
How many do you think there are?
Oh, gosh. It's hard to say. Based on how many sightings, just in our store, I think we have 300 pins on the map. Now, those are not only physical sightings. Some of them are vocalizations that people hear, or tree structures they found, or footprints. But
You.
that's still a lot of pins for a little town, one store in Colorado. So
Yeah.
my guess is you have to multiply that by many times over. So, and we've had sightings in any direction you go out of Bailey. And so there can't be one family group that's moving that much. There has to
Right.
be more than one family group in this area. And if that's true,
That's nice.
then I multiply that out by the whole country, and there has to be hundreds of thousands of them.
Oh, that,
Yeah.
that would
So,
That's not even counting the Yukon and British Columbia. And,
oh yeah. That's just in the continental U.S., and there's been sightings in every state in the continental U.S. So,
yeah.
most people assume it's the Pacific Northwest only, but
Right.
Colorado has a lot of sightings. The Deep South has a lot. They call them skunk ape down there.
right.
Right.
The Northeast has a lot. So the Pacific Northwest became famous because I'm convinced of the Patterson-Gimlin video or
Yeah.
film that was filmed in Northern California. People just automatically assumed that that's where they live in Northern California, Oregon, Washington.
Right.
Yeah.
But yes, they're up there, but that's not the only place they are.
What I find interesting is all the Native American legends.
Yes.
Every tribe, every part of the country, different countries, in fact, they have these oral histories of these giant beings.
Yeah.
Well, the only continent that I just talked about this yesterday with someone, the only continent that I've never heard any stories of a Sasquatch-like creature is Africa. Now, they have gorillas, but I've never heard any stories out of Africa of anything like Sasquatch. They're in China, they're in Australia, they're in Southeast Asia, they're in the Himalayas. Every other continent has some version of a Sasquatch except Africa, which is interesting to me.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I will never forget it, and the older I get, the more I want to see one, maybe from a distance, but, I know they're real. I know what we saw, or I saw.
Be ready next time.
Yeah, and every time we take a drive to the mountains or something, we have a camera, and we're looking for it, and we just
Sure.
I don't know that I'm going to get out of the car. It'd be nice to come across the field or something and then be able to take a picture calmly, because, you watch them on TV and the camera's shaking, and
Oh, yeah.
it's frustrating. It's like, hold still.
Yes.
Although that's understandable.
Sure,
You
yeah.
understand it from your experience. So,
Yeah.
but one of these days, either one of a couple things is going to happen. Someone's going to find, a civilian is going to find a dead body. I'm convinced our government has had
Yes, I think
remains, if not even more than that, for a long time. But
I would think.
or the government, some agency, whether it be the Forest Service or National Parks, somebody's going to come out and admit that they've known about them forever, and they just never say anything to the general public. But
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't understand.
yeah. I don't know if you remember, in the museum there's a poster that talks about the Mountain Hood National Forest has a database, and they're tracking Bigfoot sightings by their fire crews, and they have a questionnaire that they ask them to fill out, and it says at the top of the questionnaire, don't bother submitting joke reports, they won't be entered in the database. So they have a database.
That's interesting.
So if one national forest is doing that, there has to be more.
Sure.
It can't just be that one national forest.
Right.
Right. And then there's probably more that aren't even publicizing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's every story is fascinating to me. I appreciate your story and
Oh, well, thank you.
and your willingness to share it, and I think our listeners will be excited to hear this.
Oh, well, that's
Because
nice.
it just adds to our library of sightings. Now, the next time you come to the store, remind me who you are when you come in, because I don't remember everyone's face.
Sure.
And then we'll go back and put a pin in the map where you had your encounter.
We put the pin in the map the day we were.
Did you?
Yeah, we
Okay.
did. Oh, she helped us do
And
that.
you said it was above Boulder. I'll have to look for that pin then.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's above
yeah.
Boulder Canyon. Well, we went up Boulder Canyon. I don't know how far above the falls. Everybody goes to Boulder Falls. It was above there, so.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I had you put a pin. I should every time someone tells a story like this. So sometimes they get away without me getting their pin on the map, but I try to whenever I think about it. So,
But we'll take another look. We'll be up there.
Yeah, it
well,
was.
please do.
If we love.
If you haven't, have you been up since we expanded the I brought in 27 trees into the store. I don't know if you've seen it since we did that.
No.
Well, we
that's
were
been-
there about a year ago.
So, yeah, that's
Well, it was a little over a year ago that I did that. I finished that in last October, so it must have been a little bit longer than a year. But yeah, please come. I'd love to show you what we've done.
Okay,
Well,
sure.
sure.
Yeah,
It's
we
there.
enjoyed it. We probably didn't get to see everything because there was so much there.
There are a lot of people.
Right.
The next thing I want
Yeah.
to hear is a vocalization. I think that would be cool to hear that
Well,
in person.
In person, I agree. I've heard some. I've heard quite a few actually, and it's that's quite an experience to hear them speak. That's the most amazing thing is they sound just like people.
Yeah. sure, that's amazing.
Just a language that you don't understand, and
Right.
Amazing.
yeah, it is quite amazing. So. Well, listen, Scott and Beth, thank you so much for being willing to tell the story. And
Sure, and thank you
Thank
for having
you for
us.
asking.
when we get to the point where we are going to put it up among our podcasts, I'll let you know
Okay.
so you can check it out.
That'd be great.
Great.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we'll see
All
you.
right.
Talk to you again soon, I hope.
Have a
Yeah.
nice day.
Bye-bye.
So, so Jim, is Bigfoot a pervert because he's watching people pee?
They weren't peeing.
I thought
He
she
was-
was peeing.
No,
And she was
no. No. She was sitting there. Remember, she was chilly, and she asked Scott to go get her sweater from the car, and she stayed sitting there with this Sasquatch up the hill behind her. And I said, remember, I said to Scott, it's a little creepy that you went down to the vehicle like 50 yards away to go get her sweater. If Sasquatch had wanted to snatch her, that would have been his opportunity.
Okay, yeah, so I heard that wrong. All right, so that would be scary if that happened to me and my wife when we were out there. We would probably end up moving from here to the city, and she would never go to the woods again.
Now, I will say Sasquatch does seem to show up a lot or do things a lot when people are indisposed on the camp toilet. So
That's what it is.
That's not unusual for them to interact with someone while they're relieving themselves in one way or another. But that's a subject for another recording. But
That's just taking advantage of people at their most,
most vulnerable.
That's not cool, man.
Most vulnerable. So, no, she was just sitting there waiting for him. So when he came back up, it was just crazy that he saw this thing up above her. And what struck me was how big he said it was. I mean, he said 8 feet, maybe taller. It was just massive. And it wasn't so much the height. Remember, he said it was the girth of this thing, the width of this thing that was so massive.
Here's my thing. Because I looked it up after I heard it, but I mean, it would have to be a lot bigger than Shaq if it's 8 feet, what
Yeah,
he's describing.
for
Because Shaq's 7, so he's already a big guy. Like
He is a big
the
guy.
difference between a foot, I mean, that's a difference, but I mean, it's not that big of a difference.
But Shaq isn't 4 feet wide at the shoulders, so... And then
Well,
he
no.
said his body had like a chiseled bodybuilder physique,
Yeah. And Shaq's just a big guy.
He is a big guy. He is a big guy.
Hey, that's a casting idea, though. If we ever do
Sasquatch.
another movie down, yeah.
Hey, Shaq Squatch. There's another term for you.
And see, there, that's a good idea for a sticker right there, like Sasquatch with the Orlando
Yeah.
jersey on.
Yeah, there you go. Shaq Squatch. Now, dude, I'm going to have to come up with something like that. That's a great idea. Anybody who's a Shaq fan would definitely buy that shirt.
So, I mean, the other thing is they weren't. I mean, they do sound. It was like 20 years ago when this happened to him, right?
Yes. No, more than
Okay.
that. It was like 30
So
years
like
ago.
40.
They
Yeah,
weren't even
something.
married.
Okay, so it was a long time ago. I was wondering, I don't know if it's just me. I know my wife gets turned around a lot in the woods and stuff like that, but I'm pretty good with directions on that. Like if I go to a point once, I can get back there again.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, I
I've
think
always-
it's probably changed because Boulder has been built up, and that area may be a subdivision now. Who knows?
Oh yeah, they were mentioning that too. It's just like, especially if something like that monument's happened to me, I would be able to get back there, no doubt. But I mean, like as we were saying, it was a long time ago or whatnot, and they don't want to go back there. It doesn't seem like.
No, they certainly didn't want to go back at the time. And as much racket as that thing was making running away, if they had gone back, they would have followed the trail, broken branches and tree stumps and stuff. Because they said it sounded like a bulldozer going through the woods.
See, that's nuts. And most of the times, other people describe it the opposite way, where he's rushing off and it's quiet.
Right. For some reason, this one
didn't care.
Was afraid, or I don't know why it would have been afraid of Gary, but I don't think it meant them any harm. I think it truly was just watching them, and got itself in the open a little too much. Or, as I said to Gary, maybe it wanted him to see it, which is why it stepped out into an open area where he could. If it had stayed behind the trees and bushes, Gary would have never known it was there. Not Gary, sorry, Scott. Scott would have never known it was there.
And that is a trait shown by male animals. They do make themselves present, especially when there's something around that they want, like a female or something like that.
All I know is they're very intelligent, and for some reason it just was not going to stick around. But I could see why that would be alarming. Making that much racket, taking off, it would scare you. Even if it was a bear or a moose, it would make your heart stop, and you probably wouldn't stick around.
I wouldn't. No. But, I don't even go into the ocean like that much anymore after learning about all the sharks.
Well, hey, do you want to talk about woo for a minute?
Yes. What is woo?
Okay, so it's a little hard to explain. Woo. So basically, the Bigfoot world seems to be divided more or less. I mean, obviously, this is a big generalization, but divided into two camps. One camp would be the apers, is what I would call them. So Sasquatch is purely a version of great ape. It's North America's great ape, or because they exist around the world, it's an undiscovered species of great ape, like a gorilla or an orangutan. The other side would say no, they're more human than they are ape, and they have. Now, not everyone who's on the human hybrid side would be woo. They would just simply say the DNA evidence says that they're partially human. But the people on that side tend to be more in the woo camp. And woo basically is talking about the paranormal, unexplainable sides of Sasquatch. For instance, things like Sasquatch being cloaked in the woods, something being cloaked like a predator effect, which we can talk about in the future. I have examples of that. Or Sasquatch disappearing, or Sasquatch doing mind reading or mind speak, talking into people's minds or healing people. This is all what you would consider the woo side of Sasquatch, which, if it's true, explains a lot. The fact that Sasquatch can appear and disappear at will, apparently, would explain why we see them and then they're gone, for instance.
So this is almost getting into the paranormal realm.
It is paranormal, and that sets some people off for sure. But the woo side, I mean, we've already talked about Harriet's story about the healing. That's definitely woo. And I've got another interview I want to do with a guy who himself had an experience that is incredible. I've got to get him on. That happened in the Pacific Northwest, where he had an encounter with a Sasquatch and was healed of an ailment he had been suffering from. So I'll put that out there as a carrot to get people to keep listening in. But yeah, this is something that we can't explain. I believe it's there. I believe it's real. I think there is a paranormal side to Sasquatch. that people can't explain why their footprints just stop in the middle of an open area with nowhere else for Sasquatch to go. They just end. Or this whole mind speak, which I've never experienced, to be honest, but people talk about being in the woods or even being at home and having thoughts kind of sent into their head, unsought after, and that they end up communicating with these Sasquatch in their minds. And it's a hard one to grasp and a hard one to believe, to be honest, because it's just it's what they say happened. No one else can see that or hear that. It's just what they say they're hearing.
Honestly, if I was to believe either one, I would have to probably lean more to the ape theory.
You would be an aper, Josh. Totally.
Yeah, I would. I don't know. There's nothing I've seen in my life that, just screams the paranormal.
No, I agree. You've never been on a ghost hunt or anything like that, or had?
I have. I used to work for a show where that's what we did, and I'll be honest with you people. I'll be honest with the audience out there. What we actually use is camera tricks, and
oh, you're gonna tell me that's all fake? Oh, gosh.
It's all fake, man. Just like Bear Grylls. It's a production. That's why you're producing something.
That's not us. We don't do that.
No, I'm not saying everybody does. I'm saying you were bummed out when you found out about the Bear Grylls thing, right?
Yes, I was definitely bummed.
But me, I was like, well, yeah, we have to get it done, right? That's how you do it. You've been out with me on a shoot. We got to get the shot.
Well, we do. But we weren't filming a reality show either, so.
Well, that's true. But even reality is scripted. Even reality shows. I mean, do we really believe the Kardashians live that life?
We need to find a Sasquatch family we can do a reality show on.
See, that would be good, but ultimately, getting releases and whatnot, we might just have to script that one too.
Excuse me. Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, I it's not like I'm not open to when people. I don't dismiss people when they tell me that a ghost came and talked to me. I kind of think, well, what mentally did that? Subconsciously, what made you think that, or that you saw the person that died, or whatever, whatever ghost story.
Well, I've been out a lot. I've never had mind speak. I've never been zapped or sizzled, although I know a lot of people who say that's happened. I have seen eyes shine, and I would put eyes shine in this category of unexplainable, because nothing else in nature, no mammal has the ability to do what Sasquatch seems to do. So this is not Einstein,
when you're driving down the road and you see a deer on the side of the road and they're lights blended. Not like that.
It's not reflecting back your light. It's in the pitch black. Their eyes glow. And the intensity changes and the color changes. And I know as I'm saying this, it must sound totally bogus, but I've seen it. I believe it was real. And I can't explain it. I have no explanation for it.
Just like that. I mean, science, again, I'll go to science, biology, anglerfish. They flash a light to get other fish in the deep, dark black to come to them. They do.
They have a bioluminescence.
And that's a light they generate.
Yep.
They actually generate that light. It's visible to the camera. You can see it. So, yeah, I believe that. I mean, look at octopuses. If you want to see, the craziest thing in the world are octopuses, man. They can actually camouflage themselves to look like the structure they're on. So
and they're
it's like a
way intelligent, really intelligent.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we can believe octopus do all this stuff, I can believe that there's a creature out there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That could do something similar. I mean, it's...
Well, you're on your way, Josh. You're on your way.
I'm on my way. I'm still skeptical. I'm just saying that could be possible.
You're on your way. Hey, folks, We're seeing history being made here. Josh is moving into the Sasquatch camp. So,
like I said, with an open mind, we did the show. You know, when we started doing this, I tell you, I do it with an open mind. So hey everybody, me and Jim would like to hear what you think about woo.
We would.
Are you more on the woo side, or are you more on the science side, I'll call it?
Yeah, let us know your thoughts. We would love to be able to respond to some of your questions that you send. You can contact us on our website, on YouTube. We just like to know that you're watching and that you want to interact with us about something that we talked about on the show.
Oh, yeah. So, like you said, yeah, so the real big ones that are really active right now are YouTube and Facebook.
Okay, and Facebook. Gotcha.
So if you post anything there, we'll be Johnny on the spot about that one.
We will. We'll have one of our shows to answering some of those questions. So,
you got anything coming up in the store?
Not in the store. We can just put a plug in for the summer because registration is already open. We're going to do another Bigfoot Adventure weekend, and that's going to be the second weekend in August. And registration is already open, and you can find that at BigfootAdventureWeekends.com and click on Colorado. There's going to be one in Ohio, but we're talking about the Colorado one. Second weekend in August, there's a Thursday night extreme night out where we take people out to an area that we believe is active, where they're more likely to have an encounter, and then 2 nights at Glen Isle Resort camping and having a fantastic time.
Awesome, and that place is so cool. It's such a historic, you know.
Talking about haunted, that lodge is haunted, I believe. So.
Yeah, upstairs, man. Like I went to, we did something for the tourist office for them, and like
it's creepy.
The dolls, man.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
But I love that tree that's going through it. That is such a cool.
That tree is really cool.
If Bigfoot stayed at hotels, that's where he would sit.
That I agree. Totally agree.
All right, everybody. Well, I guess like listening about today and all the woo stuff. I mean, I don't know Squatch.
No, just don't ever think you do until you do.